the criminals amongst the homeless population. With that, what happens is, I'll give you an example, is you'll have a drug deal happen.
Stand and join with us in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag
of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you very much. So I will look for a motion regarding the minutes.
Mr. Chair, I move that we approve the minutes from the work session of Tuesday, September 13th, Tuesday, September 20th, Tuesday, October 4th, 2016, and the formal meeting minutes of Tuesday, October 4th, 2016, and the special meeting minutes of Thursday, October 13th, 2016.
Second.
Okay, a motion by Councilmember Penfold, second by Councilmember Rogers to approve several minutes. Any discussion on this item? Seeing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? The motion is approved and the minutes are accepted. So as we move to item B on our agenda, which is our public hearings, I would like to remind you all of the rules of decorum, that we don't have any clapping, booing, jeering, or cheering, that we create an environment where everybody is comfortable speaking to the council, regardless of whether or not you in the audience necessarily support their positions. So before we move into the public hearing, I will look to our RDA chair, Councilmember Adams, for a motion.
I move, Mr. Chair, that we move into an RDA session to have the public hearing for that, for the budget amendment
Second.
and housing.
Second.
Motion by Councilmember Adams, second by Councilmember
Assuming that
Penfold.
includes recessing as the city
Yes,
council.
we recess as the city council and as members of the RDA board.
Great. So
Okay.
restated motion by Councilmember Adams, second by Councilmember Penfold. Any discussion? Seeing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? And we are now convened as the board of the Redevelopment Agency of Salt Lake City.
And as the chair of the redevelopment agency, I'm going to ask board member Luke to continue to chair. But prior to doing that, if I could just have a point of personal privilege.
Absolutely.
As many of you know, last week the council, it's turned on, but is that better? There we go. Thank you. As many of you know, last week the council, acting as the RDA board, set aside up to $21 million for affordable housing. While a lot of money, up to $21 million, is only a portion of the approximately $120 million in the RDA budget, which leaves a lot of room for great projects and other priorities. Our decision to fund housing that our workforce can afford, meaning teachers, firefighters, policemen, fresh college graduates, does not mean that we are withdrawing support for other redevelopment projects. We look forward to hearing from you this evening and to understand the approximately $120 million budget is not yet final. So we're in the midst of this. So with that statement, I'll turn it over to you for the public hearing.
Thank you very much, Board Member Adams. If you are interested in addressing the board of the Redevelopment Agency, I'd ask you to fill out a green card similar to this and pass it to one of our staff members over here. I will read out two names. So the first person will come up to the microphone, the second person will be ready. Each person will have 2 minutes to address the board. The first card that I have is for David Brems, followed by Soren Simonson. Mr. Brems.
That was quick, thank you. My name is David Brems. I'm an owner of a building and an architecture firm on 4th West and 2nd South in the Rio Grande District. We moved to the Rio Grande District from the Granary District. We renovated the old Pitcher Line building, if you know what that is, in 2000. We've witnessed positive change economic development brings with the construction of the Jazz Arena and the Gateway. We've also witnessed negative change as crime was concentrated in our Rio Grande neighborhood. Operation Diversion is having an impact, but we're still experiencing crime and sanitation problems around our building. Last week, one of our employees was assaulted outside of our office. Taking $6.4 million from the Station Center project for badly needed housing sounds like a great immediate solution. $6.4 million will directly buy about 50 homes. Leveraging $6.4 million with development agreements will easily create 50 low-income homes, probably more. Leveraging $6.4 million will create safe, exciting public spaces, spurring even more economic development, leading to even more low-income homes. Leveraging the $6.4 million with high sustainability requirements will set a national example for Salt Lake City. Reducing homelessness, spurring economic development, and meeting sustainability goals are not mutually exclusive. I encourage you to immediately begin construction of the Festival Street on 300 South as soon as possible. This will be a powerful signal for the new Rio Grande District economic development to begin. Consider renegotiating with the new projects in the area to increase density to include 50 low-income units, or negotiate 50 units across the other viable projects. Require the new units to be highly sustainable or net zero.
Time.
Taking $6.4 million from Station Center will be a setback or stop development in the Rio Grande neighborhood. It will further
Mr.
erode
Brems,
our
if you could
hope
finish your
for
thought.
our neighborhood. Thank you.
Thank you. Soren Simonson, followed by Tim Funk.
Thank you, esteemed council and RDA board members, for the opportunity to address you this evening. As you all know, I'm currently involved with a couple of projects as a developer and urban designer, both in the Station Center District and in the Central 9th District. I've reached out to the council member Kitchens, who I know is out of the country right now, but I'll share some other thoughts with each of you because I know you're all involved with this decision. I certainly recognize your desire to provide affordable housing, and your development community in Salt Lake City is very interested and wants to partner with you to help address that. As I look at the landscape of budget proposals that you're considering right now, I do have great concern about some of the recommendations to take funding from infrastructure and public improvement projects that may inadvertently negatively impact your ability to provide the very thing that you're after. Incentives are great, but those incentives are not just financial to develop affordable housing. Sometimes the incentives are things like burying power lines to be able to build at higher densities, adding new infrastructure, water, sewer, broadband, and other things that serve the communities that you want to house. And I think it's essential that we look very cautiously at taking funding from really important infrastructure projects, including transportation, walkability, infrastructure, and those sorts of things that are being contemplated, perhaps shifting funding into housing, because you may very well cut off the supply of housing that's already in the pipeline. I would like to encourage you to communicate with your development partners in the community and look for opportunities to reach beyond just providing financial incentives and talk to us about ways that we can partner together to help meet the housing crisis that we understand is important to the city. The final thing I'll say is Salt Lake City, including the redevelopment agency, is one of the largest property owners, if not the largest property owner, of developable land in Salt Lake City. And one of the most important things that we can do is to get that land into the hands of developers. And I think that would take a partnership of the RDA board and the administration to make those properties available as soon as possible. It's a good building climate right now. The market forces will support affordable housing. So let's get property into the hands of development partners. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Tim Funk, followed by Allison Einerson.
Good evening.
Those of us who advocate for low-income affordable housing in the city are excited, delighted actually, about the city council plans to put millions of dollars of RDA's funds into low-income affordable housing. Coupled with your developing commitment to homeless centers and support programs for that, this marks a giant step forward. There are short and long-term things to do. Right now, you can finalize your RDA commitment to affordable housing and get going as soon as possible. This is a long time coming, and we need it badly. You can also finalize the TSA zoning district improvement proposal, especially the guidelines incentivizing more affordable housing. Long term, the city hand has issued its report on sustainable affordable housing. There are many useful recommendations in it. Most importantly, we support a city-issued levy of $80 million. This would go a long ways towards establishing a long-term funded, coherent city housing policy and plan. We also support an inclusionary zoning policy, making sure affordable housing is involved in every development decision. This is a groundbreaking time. There's plenty to do. Let's make it happen. I think you'll hear all kinds of comments on this, but from our point of view, from the community level point of view, the people we work for and the people we work with who need the housing, we couldn't be more delighted that you're taking this course of action. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Funk. Allison Einerson, followed by George Chapman.
Hello, everyone. Thank you for letting me speak. I'm here on behalf of the Downtown Alliance of Salt Lake City. For many years, the Downtown Alliance has worked with the RDA board and staff to plan a new future for the Station Center project. The current development plans for the project area have been through a lengthy vetting process, and we are optimistic about the future. Together, we have developed plans for a year-round public market that will be an anchor for this neighborhood. We're moving forward with these plans because we know that successful development requires predictability, confidence, and collaboration. Success in Station Center will only come with continued investment from public and private sources. We know that the RDA board believes in the success of this district, and we believe city leaders will move forward to fulfill all the commitments that have been made. The Downtown Alliance is also very supportive of public investment in affordable housing. This is a critical need for our city. Building more affordable housing across the entire Wasatch Front will also help this neighborhood because it will reduce the number of people who need emergency homeless services. Our support for ongoing investment in Station Center does not preclude our advocacy for additional investment in affordable housing. Continued investment in Station Center infrastructure and affordable housing are both important and certainly not mutually exclusive. We look forward to working with city leaders to address these funding priorities as we work collaboratively to build a more dynamic and diverse downtown.
Thank you, Ms. Einerson. George Chapman, followed by Don Butterfield.
I want to congratulate all of you for pushing affordable housing. You're absolutely right. And when Derek gets back, tell him he's changing the world again for the good. Aaron, if you do nothing else, this is still an amazing feat. Please keep up the good work. Stan, you're absolutely right. Children should never, ever be exposed to the homeless shelter. And you have a chance with these funds to actually set up a program where they don't have to be exposed to the homeless shelter. And Mayor, the council is right. It doesn't make sense to spend millions of dollars on art when people are crapping on the sidewalk. It doesn't make sense to spend millions of dollars on refurbishing Pioneer Park when people are using drugs openly and leaving the needles there. And it doesn't make sense to spend even $100 million on the Depot District when people are camping out. Affordable housing is a very important economic development tool. Derek was right. Council, you're right, and I hope you keep up the good work. Thanks for listening.
Thank you, Mr. Chapman. Don Butterfield, followed by Micah Peters.
think we all recognize that this, affordable housing is an important thing to happen in our community and is needed. And we're all for that. The mechanism in which this is being done and the fast track that it isn't, in my view, not leveraged very well where we could get more is not correct in my view. We need not the RDA to be doing this alone. Why has this subject become a Salt Lake City problem? We also need to have the county helping us and also the state helping us. Somehow, amongst all this history, we've come to be the housing of a lot of the homeless, and I realize that there's other places around the county that is also burdened with some of this. But in using RDA funds, when we need more economic development downtown and in Salt Lake City, and the plans that we have in place for that development are good and purposeful and leveraged and well thought out. This, in spite of the bad press, this seems to have been moving this agenda pretty forward. And yes, we want to do something, but is this the right way to do it and the best use of public funds, where we could use it in different venues and leverage the money better to get more housing, more bang for our buck? Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Butterfield. Micah Peters, followed by Bernard Hart. And Mr. Hart's card is the last card that I have. So if you're interested in speaking, again, fill the cards out, hand them to our staff.
Members of the council, Mayor, thank you so much for allowing us to speak tonight. I'd like to thank all of you for your leadership on this issue. It's really impressive, and I'm really proud of what you're doing on a lot of levels. Like any big plan, the devil's in the details. And when I looked at the motion last week, and I looked at the itemized list of where the funds were coming from, the first thing that came to my mind is all those contracts that the RDA has been working on with other developers in order to bring Center Station to a shovel-ready project. And I think it's really important when we talk about this list of items that comprise the money that we're talking about here, the $20 million. When the RDA goes to RFP and RFQ for projects, there is an implied level of trunk line infrastructure and other items that the RDA is going to do at every location. And those items aren't necessarily contracted as part of the deal. For example, the 4 to 6 developers that are contracted at Center Station wouldn't necessarily force the RDA to write a contract for all the infrastructure they would put in there. So when you guys are looking at this and taking money and moving it around, make sure that it's not just the contracted money that the RDA has on projects, it's also the implied money. For instance, in deals that I've done with the RDA at the Marmalade, from the very outset they were going to provide the funds for the city park there as well as the retaining wall in back. Well, we proceeded to deploy soft costs to the tune of several $1 million and develop the entire site around this concept of a park. But I didn't contract with the RDA to build the said park. So just as a point of reference, in terms of monies that you are moving around, make sure you include contracted monies and implied monies that are safe and not to be touched. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Mr. Peters. Bernard Hart, followed by Dave Iltis. And I think I have one more card after this.
Thank you for your efforts. I can't pretend to be an expert on development, but I know that affordable housing in a growing economy, and when there's a lot of pressure on development and there's money available for development, the needs of the workers and the people in the community, that the school teachers and the fire department and the police department and the people that work in some of our businesses are overlooked in the rush to build and grow and get more and more. And more isn't always the end thing that we all need to succeed as a community. We can't move beyond the people that work in the community and the people that participate in the community at the jobs that we all need. So thank you for thinking about them, and thank you for keeping them in their thoughts. They also need a place to live, as well as the homeless. So thanks. Love your focus.
Thank you, Mr. Hart. Dave Iltis, followed by Boren Watson.
Hi. I'd like to say I applaud the focus that you have on creating affordable housing. It's certainly needed within Salt Lake, and it's one of the, by focusing on that market need, housing costs won't rise as rapidly. I hope you guys could, that the mayor and the council could use this crisis or resolution, or attempt to resolve this crisis, to use your stature in the community to address the causes of homelessness. This is something that either the press is not reporting this, or the mayor and the council are not talking about this, but low wages, there's not a living wage in Salt Lake, rapidly increasing healthcare costs, transportation costs, increased housing costs, lack of proper substance abuse and mental health treatments, and all of those things need to be talked about in the same breath that you're talking about increasing the housing supply, because otherwise all you're doing is treating the symptom. You're not treating the causes of this. And so I think this is a great initiative, and the last thing I wanted to close with is that regarding the various projects that you are moving away, and some of them you're suggesting to fund with impact fees, and you say you can fund them, I hope that you will fund those and get a better plan in place for how you're going to utilize the impact fees. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Iltis. Boren Watson is the last card that I have.
I apologize for my handwriting. It's Brian Watson.
Oh, Brian. I apologize for my reading.
All right, so my name is Brian Watson. I'm president of the Underprivileged Alliance, and we create solutions from the inside. I've worked with various facilities and with the staff and clients or residents, and I see solutions, very simple solutions that can be done in a very short time, and then you have the longer term solutions, but there's things that can be done in a short time, but they're being overlooked. And one of the reasons is I've already gone to members of the mayor's office, gave them the full rundown of it, which I won't do here, but I haven't gotten feedback on it yet, so now I'm looking toward the council. Hopefully I give you my contact information and we can have a good partnership. So some of the points that I'll hit is common goals. We all want to make the area better. By doing that, we're going to need to see some feedback. So publishing stats. What I see is people going out to these, affordable housing, then they'll come back to the road home. It seems like the output, the caseworkers want them out, get them out, boom, boom, boom. So there's no sustainable, programs. So they're out and then they're back in 6 months, a year, 2 years, whatever, they're back in. So we need better sustainable programs to help prevent and keep people out. Services need to be reevaluated. I'm looking at the host building mostly. All they do is just point people in directions like go here, go there. They don't really do anything in the building itself. A replacement that I tried to set up with Mark McCashlin, LDS model, seemed very good in terms of prepping people for jobs. We need that in the host building. We need something that's more effective there so we can help people transition out and stay out. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Watson. If we have a number of our council staff sitting over here, what I'd like to do is have one of them talk with you in the hall to get some of that information that you're referencing. And Mr. Watson's card is the last card that I have. Is there anybody else that would like to speak to this public hearing? All right,
Mr.
seeing
Chair, Mr. Chair, I move that we continue this public hearing to 2 future dates. The first being November 1st, as part of the council formal meeting next week, and the second being November 15th as part of the RDA board meeting.
Thank you, Board Member
Second.
Penfold. Motion by Board Member Penfold to continue the public hearing for 2 more dates, seconded by Board Member Rogers. Any discussion? Hearing none, all in favor? Aye. Any opposed? The motion passes.
Mr. Chair, I move that we adjourn as the Board of the Redevelopment Agency and reconvene as the Salt Lake City Council.
Second.
Okay, a motion by Board Member Adams, second by Board Member Mendenhall to convene as the Salt Lake City Council. Any discussion?
And adjourn.
And adjourn from the RDA, re-adjourn as the, or reconvene as the City Council. Any discussions? Seeing none. All in favor? Aye.
Watch
Any
closely. Okay, you missed it.
There we
It
go.
changed.
Okay, the second public hearing that we have listed is item number 2 on the agenda, an alley closure, 700 West at approximately 723 West Pacific Avenue. I do not have any cards for this public hearing. Is there anybody interested in speaking to this public hearing? All right, seeing no one to speak to this public hearing, I'll look for a motion.
Mr. Chair, I move that we close this public hearing and defer to a future date.
Motion by Councilmember Penfold,
Second.
second by Councilmember Mendenhall. Any discussion? Hearing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? The public hearing is continued. We will now move to item C on our agenda under potential action items. The first item is listed under 1, the fine-tuning of local historic district LHD designation process.
Mr. Chair, you want to go?
Yeah, I move the council adopt an ordinance amending the city code pertaining to the local historic district designation process.
Second.
Motion by Councilmember Mendenhall, second by Councilmember Penfold. Any discussion? Hearing none. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? That motion passes. The next item is listed under Video Services Ordinance Amendments. I'll look for a motion.
Mr. Chair, I move the council adopt an ordinance amending chapters 5.20, 5.20A, and 5.21 of the Salt Lake City Code relating to cable television systems, cable communications franchise grant, and cable communications service standards.
Second.
A motion by Councilmember Mendenhall, second by Councilmember Adams. Any discussion to this ordinance? Hearing none. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? That ordinance passes. We now move to item D on our agenda, questions to the mayor from the city council. And unfortunately, for another week, we do not have anybody from the administration here to take questions or comments from the city council.
So, just a moment of personal privilege, Mr. Chair.
Yes, Councilmember Rogers.
I cannot tell you how frustrating this is for me. This is the 6th or 7th time that I have been expecting to see a mayor or the administration there so we can ask them about impact fees and what to do in the moratorium. And I just cannot believe that she is not here or she does not have staff here to answer our questions. This is the 7th or 8th time that we have not had the mayor or the administration here. And it's just convenient that they all of a sudden they get up and leave right before the questions come. This is so infuriating to me.
Here comes one.
Oh. We have Deputy Chief of Staff David Litvack.
I'm sorry that it's you at the table, David. I really am. I just feel like you're the one that's taking the brunt of it. I have a question, and my question is, we're hearing from developers, we're hearing from people in the community. We as council members want to know, why hasn't the mayor put forth some sort of idea of what to do in the interim until the new impact fee is put into place? Why hasn't she proposed something to us?
Regarding impact fees?
Yes, come November 1st until the 90-day adoption of impact fees, what is she going to do? Why hasn't she proposed anything?
So what we proposed and what we shared initially with the draft of the impact fee study and what the council had a session on today is the administration's proposal for
So she
impact
wants us
fees.
to move forward with a moratorium.
No, she wants to move forward with the proposal that was forwarded.
I understand that, but in the interim, until that is adopted, why has she not proposed something?
We think that the proposal that was brought to you today is the right policy. It's good policy. It's well thought out.
I think it is. I think
deliberative.
it's great policy, but I don't think you're understanding my question, David. The question is, come November 1, the moratorium ends. There has not been a proposal from the administration to tell us what you would like to see until the new policy is adopted.
Well, I guess from the administration, and are kind of passed across a little bit, what we would like to see is the adoption of that policy.
That's not going to happen. And you knew that wasn't going to happen when we received it. Because we have to go through we have to go through the process, we have to debate it amongst ourselves, and then there's a 90-day until that is put in place.
There's a 90-day for fees that are raised.
That's right.
For fees,
We have
which
the draft. This is so frustrating
Right.
for me
For the
because
majority of
we
fees.
received the draft and what you're suggesting, but there is nothing in the interim. What are we looking at? I feel like it's on our shoulders to have to do it. That's not fair. I don't understand why why didn't the mayor propose something?
Councilman, what were you asked for the mayor to propose?
Can someone else say it, because I don't think I'm getting my point across.
A plan for transition, that we received the information so late that there will be a time at which, November 2nd, the moratorium lapses, and we have to wait at least 90 days after we accept the new plan, which at soonest would be mid-December. That's assuming that we don't receive significant feedback from the community in the public hearing process that would lead to us making significant changes, which would push it into January at least. And at that point of adoption, it's still another 90 days until we can start to collect on that good policy that you see. And so at about $500,000 a month lost in impact fees every month that we don't gather, we're asking in this transition time. Our staff came up with 5 different transition options, and we are asking, why hasn't the administration made a recommendation as to what they would like to see, because we can't adopt the good policy right away. That would have been nice to have done if we would have received the administration's transmittal over 90 days ago. Then we could have done it before the moratorium lapsed. But we haven't. Here we are, days away from the moratorium ending, without a recommendation as to how we transition.
And I think our position has been all the while that we want the council to take whatever time it needs to evaluate, and this policy, whatever time that may be, is fair. But this is, you have been involved in this process. There have been dialogues for the past months on this. We have brought in, at your request, the consultant to answer your questions. So this, from our point of view, please take the time you need, but this is a decision for the council to adopt.
I don't think you're understanding what we're saying. You're talking about an end result, and we appreciate the consultant's recommendations, and we absolutely will take the time to do the public process appropriately without rushing it. That's not what we're talking about. The reality of when we receive this transmittal puts us in a state where we have a transition. We have months at least that will go by before we can collect impact fees. We are asking of the options, there's at least 5 options. What does the administration want done in the interim before we adopt? Before we can start collecting on what we've adopted, rather.
We gave 5 choices, and we asked today in our work session, do you like any of those? Do you have a 6th, a 7th, and 8th? And what we heard was deafening silence. No one said anything. There was no feedback on it. We'd love to know. We've been scolded a lot about not collaborating. We're trying to collaborate. We want you to weigh in, and we can't get an answer.
Well, Councilwoman, we believe that we have been collaborating in this process. We have been working very hard to move forward the impact impact fee study as quickly as we possibly
Right,
could.
but answer the question. In the interim, what do we do? Do you have a suggestion? Do you like one of our 5 ideas that we had? Do you have anything?
We have not, neither Dave and I have seen those 5 ideas, and so we can't opine on those
They were in the
tonight.
transmittal. They were in our packet. You guys get that?
Okay, so let me try to, let me phrase another question. Would the administration support an extension of the moratorium for the time that it takes the council to work through the process that we have, to go to public hearing, to hear back from the public, and to make any changes that we need, including the 90 days that it'll take to allow for those impact fees that we raise? Does the administration support an extension of the moratorium during that time frame?
The administration supports the council doing what it needs to do to make sure that it is sound public policy before adopting the plan.
Those are 2 separate issues, actually. Process is one thing. We will surely do a good public process. But that's not what we're asking.
Okay.
But we're not getting anywhere.
This isn't getting us anywhere. So any other questions to the administration? Okay, we'll now move to comments to the city council. If anyone is interested in speaking to the city council, I ask that you fill out, what color? Yellow cards. I do have a number of cards. The rules for decorum apply as they did for the previous public hearings. So again, each speaker has 2 minutes to speak. The first speaker is Douglas Cotant, followed by George Chapman.
First of all, I want to ask the city council, did you get the letters that were handed to you? Yes. Because I just found out after I got home this afternoon that apparently housing has decided to cancel the contract with the new brand, apparently because of the elevator. But in my personal opinion, the elevator is working, and I don't see the reason why for this situation. I don't know what's going to happen to me. I don't know if I'm going to stay there or if I'm going to have to pay higher rent. I don't know whether I'm going to have to move, and I'm upset about this to the point where I am going to speak with the housing coordinator, and I'm just afraid of losing my housing, and I might be wrong in that. I'm also afraid of the possibility that as of April 30th, I might end up on the street, and I hope I might end up on the street, and I hope that I'm wrong on that one. Oh, and Lisa, can I talk to you after the meeting? Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Cotant. George Chapman, followed by Don Butterfield.
Good evening. What Doug just told you is important. What you're doing with affordable housing affects everybody, not just Doug, but that's how serious it is. Everybody is going to be affected by this, and that's why you should keep pushing on affordable housing. It's very, very important. So I encourage you to keep doing this. You still have a lot of funding to decide on RDA and also on the city budget coming up. So I encourage you to continue to focus on affordable housing. You still have $100 million worth of city property, and I encourage you to use some of that to provide funding for a good affordable housing program, voucher system, whatever works, but we do need that. And I also encourage you to work on the homeless shelter for the winter. It's really important to get the homeless off the sidewalk, out of the parks, and into some kind of shelter so we can actually do economic development in the area. Thanks for listening.
Thank you, Mr. Chapman. Don Butterfield, followed by Soren Simonson.
Good evening once again. The other thing that is, of course, grabbed my attention in most of my neighborhoods is the new proposed Salt Lake City Transportation Plan. And of course, we all agreed, as we all remember back, that we needed to have a plan to move forward. There's a couple of assumptions in there, and one little minor flaw that I want to bring to the council's attention. You know, there in the plan, they say that that downtown, there's enough parking. And I don't know what parking places they're counting. I assume that they're probably counting a lot of parking stalls at private property and private businesses and that. If we have enough parking downtown, then why is it that every major event in the city, my neighborhood is full of cars parked in residential areas? I mean, there is something disconnect here. Say there's enough parking, they should be parking downtown. Apparently there's not enough parking because they're all parking up in the Capitol Hills and Marmalade. The other thing that we need to move upon, and pretty quickly, is that I think we're all looking beyond the mark. The Governor's Office of Economic Development tells us that Salt Lake County will double in population by 2030. That's only 13 years. And we have projects, and UTA wants to build these great projects that will take 10, 15 years down the road. Well, what do we do in the meantime? During the process of UTA building tracks and Front Runner and all this, they've gutted bus services. We need to bring that back. There's not enough reliable bus service in the city, and we need more of it. And with more people coming into the city and living in the city, and the population double, we definitely need more bus service as quickly as possible to help take care of that problem. I'd like to take more time, but
Mr. Chair, if I just may, Don, we're just barely beginning the public process for the Transit Master Plan. There'll be lots of opportunities to provide input, so I really appreciate your comments tonight, and I hope you continue to be engaged with that process going forward.
Thank you. Soren Simonson, followed by Bernard Hart. And Mr. Hart's card is the last yellow card that I have, so if there's somebody interested, I see one more.
Thank you. I wasn't here mainly to talk about this tonight, but since I'm here anyway, I'll share with you. I just received my renewal for my business license in the mail. And one of the great services that I've had in the past as a small business owner is the ability to park in a freight loading zone to carry large boxes of materials, blueprints, drawings, and other things. I just found out that that option has been removed for small businesses, and I understand that was a council item action item about a year ago. I would love to have you maybe talk about some flexibility. The options I have today are either to have a freight vehicle with my company logo on it. As a small business owner, having a separate vehicle is not an option that I have, and I know most businesses in the small business category probably don't have their own vehicles. My vehicle serves as my family wagon, my school bus, my shopping car, and everything else. So if you can add back in flexibility for business owners to be able to use those loading zones, I know there's an option available to get just a regular parking permit. It's $500, and I would have to park almost every day to use that. I don't need to make deliveries that frequently. The other challenge is that, as you probably know, is that the on-street parking spaces are almost always filled, whereas the freight loading zones are seldom filled, and I can always find one that's convenient. So I ask that you might reconsider that as you're looking at future policies around parking and freight. The other thing is, given the discussion you just had about impact fees, let me just offer perhaps an idea to help the council make a decision on this. And that is, while you're looking at affordable housing incentives, impact fees have been an enormous incentive over the last year. I don't think we've seen as much housing in the pipeline as we currently have. And as somebody who's routinely in front of the permit counter, I know that the amount of projects that are currently going through the pipeline is very, very large. So if you wanted to extend that incentive, including housing projects that are now in development, but not yet to the finish line in terms of having a building permit, you might consider extending that moratorium a bit further. It probably will have as much impact as other kinds of funding sources you're putting together, and we will continue to see, I think, a very robust affordable housing pipeline,
Simonson.
Given the projects that are now in the works. Thank you.
Thank you. Bernard Hart, followed by Dave Iltis.
Again, thank you. I was encouraged this afternoon at the work session because after attending and engaging with the mayor's staff and attending a collective impact meeting on homelessness and trying to stay involved in the issue, I've come to feel that we're dealing with a homeless problem. And that's our focus, is the homeless problem itself. The entirety of the homelessness in Salt Lake has become a major issue for the business community downtown, and it's created a lot of distress, and that's understandable in areas where the businesses are and the populations that have to deal with it all the time. But it is not a homeless problem. It's a problem we don't know what to do with that involves people. It's a people problem. And what I saw in this afternoon in the discussion was talking about people and people being hungry and people being cold and individual people not having a place to live and not being able to afford a place to live. It is a people problem that we don't know what to do about. And I'm uncomfortable personally treating it as an industrial problem or a marketing problem or a problem that we frame in some way that doesn't involve people, but it's a problem. This is people, and I want to thank you for your focus. It's needed. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Hart. Dave Iltis is the last card. Again, if there's anyone else, fill a card out and pass it forward.
Hi. Your discussion just now on impact fees it would be really nice to see agreement between the mayor and the council. I think it's also extremely unfortunate that we had an entire year we didn't collect that, and as a resident and taxpayer and homeowner in Salt Lake City, it seems like those, the intent of impact fees has completely dissolved. I don't know how much money we've given away in impact fees. Certainly there's, increased economic development because you don't, some people don't, will target their projects to be in that moratorium time, but I would like to see you guys begin collecting those fees immediately. If you have to, go back to the status quo that was there a year ago, and please use that to fund various things that you moved aside in the affordable housing discussion. Lastly, just in regards to the thing I often talk to you about is bike projects. There are several bike projects you moved aside. Please fund those with impact fees. And I know that one of your priorities for this year was to revisit and reinstate the recreation bond discussion, and so far I don't think that's happened. I would like to see you do that before the close of this year. It's you have in the CIP budget that doesn't look like it's going to get funded, but one of the #1 things is Foothill Trails. There's a master plan line item in there that doesn't look like it has priority from either the council or the mayor. That's very distressing. We are so far behind every other community on the Wasatch Front in regards to trails. Farmington has an incredible system. Draper has an incredible system. Park City has an incredible system, and Salt Lake City has a wonderful trail in the Bonneville Shoreline Trail, but no plan in addition to that. So thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Iltis. I do see one more card from Micah Peters. So while that card is making its way forward, Mr. Peters, you can as well.
Thank you. I'm double dipping, second time at that podium tonight. Dave Iltis is a friend of mine, but Dave, I respectfully disagree in your opinion on impact fees. It's a clear situation of quick nickel, slow dime, the quick nickel being impact fees, the slow dime being a lifetime of property taxes collected from the additional 25 to 35% of development units that get put on the ground during impact fee moratorium years. So I can show you a simple graph on this matter. It's not even close, okay? And I think the council showed tremendous leadership last year when they did the impact fee moratorium, and the result is there's a lot more great multifamily projects on the ground in Salt Lake City, driving economic development and culture on every level. One more point I wanted to make that kind of dovetails with what I said earlier. In respect to affordability, there's lots of shovel-ready projects in the pipeline that the RDA is involved with or is not involved with. In your toolbox are a lot of tools for funding affordability and low AMI units. It might be worth looking into the pipeline of shovel-ready projects and going back to every single one of those developers with that toolbox and opening up and saying, can we get 10 to 20, 30% of affordability in your projects? How can we do this? Because that's the quickest way to get that stuff on the ground, and there's a tremendous amount of units in the pipeline. If you've seen the latest report, it's daunting, thousands, okay? So just another suggestion on how you guys can get units on the ground quickly. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Peters. The last card is from Lauren Smith.
Hi, my name is Lauren Smith, and I've been working with John Shannon for the last year and a half or so with the people in the homeless community. I hear a lot of talk about affordable housing, and that's important, but the people down there are in immediate danger. Many are so weak that they're just wishing to die. They're afraid, so they don't report homeless on homeless crime, and I don't know what the answer is to that. I don't, we need to get them help somehow, and that's it.
All right, thank you very much, Ms. Smith. I don't have any other cards. Is there anybody else that wishes to speak? Seeing nobody else, we'll move past item E because we don't have any new business to discuss, to item F under unfinished business. Item number 1 under F is the Comcast franchise agreement, and I'll look for a motion.
Mr. Chair, I move that the council adopt an ordinance granting Comcast of Utah II, Inc. a cable television franchise agreement.
Second.
Great. Motion by Councilmember Adams, second by Councilmember Johnston. Any discussion? Seeing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? The motion passes. Item number 2, Redline Phone Incorporated franchise agreement.
Mr. Chair, I move that the council adopt an ordinance granting a telecommunication franchise to Redline Phone Incorporated.
Second.
Motion by Councilmember Rogers, seconded by Councilmember Johnston. Any discussion? Seeing none, all in favor? Aye. Any opposed? That motion passes. The third item is the First Digital Telecom franchise agreement. I'll look for a motion.
I move that we grant the ordinance granting a telecommunication franchise to First Digital Telecom.
Second.
Motion by Councilmember Rogers, second by Councilmember Johnston. Any discussion? Seeing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? That motion passes. I'll now go to Councilmember Penfold for a motion on the consent agenda with a couple of changes.
Mr. Chair, I move that we adopt the consent agenda item G1 and not G2 and G3.
Second.
Motion by Councilmember Penfold on the consent agenda, second by Councilmember Rogers, focusing only on passing the consent item number 1, the budget amendment, number 2, fiscal year 2016 and 17, and striking the 2 board appointments. Any discussion? Seeing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? The motion passes, and that is our final order of business, and so this meeting is adjourned.